The morning sun rises over the glittering waters of the Bay of Naples. Fishing boats drift quietly across the sea. Seagulls circle overhead. Vineyards stretch across fertile volcanic soil. And overlooking it all stands a mountain peaceful, majestic, almost protective. Mount Vesuvius. Today, we know it as one of the most dangerous volcanoes in Europe. But in the summer of 79 AD, no one feared it. Beneath its shadow lay a thriving Roman city, elegant, ambitious, alive, Pompeii. Within a single day, this city would be erased, buried, frozen, preserved in silence for nearly 1,700 years. This is the story of its final hours. Pompeii was not some remote outpost of the Roman world. It was sophisticated. By 79 AD, the Roman Empire ruled lands stretching from Britain to North Africa, and Pompeii, located near modern-day Naples, had grown into a prosperous resort town for Rome's elite. Its population stood at approximately 10 to 12,000 people. Wealth flowed through its streets. Ships arrived daily carrying wine, olive oil, spices, and garum fermented fish sauce prized across the empire. Inside private homes, known as domus, walls were covered in vivid frescoes, mythological scenes, landscapes, intricate geometric designs. Floors were mosaics of tiny colored stones. Rainwater collected in marble basins. Some houses even had indoor plumbing connected to lead pipe systems. Pompeii was modern by ancient standards. Life began early. Bakers fired large stone ovens before dawn. Archaeologists would later discover loaves of bread still preserved, carbonized, but intact. Street vendors sold hot food from thermopolia, ancient fast food counters built into stone slabs. Children studied rhetoric and mathematics. Politicians painted campaign slogans directly onto city walls. Gladiators trained inside Pompeii's amphitheater, one of the oldest surviving Roman amphitheaters in existence. Religion infused daily life. Temples honored Jupiter, Apollo, Venus, and household shrines known as Lararia stood inside private homes. Pompeii was not decaying. It was thriving, but beneath the ground, pressure was building. 17 years before the disaster, in 62 AD, a powerful earthquake shook the region. Buildings cracked apart, columns fell. The temple of Jupiter was heavily damaged. The Roman philosopher Seneca the Younger described the quake in his writings, noting how entire flocks of sheep reportedly died from poisonous gases released from the earth. Yet the Romans were accustomed to earthquakes. They rebuilt. Construction scaffolding still stood across parts of Pompeii in 79 AD. Evidence that recovery was ongoing. Small tremors continued in the years that followed, but no one connected them to the mountain. To the people of Pompeii, Vesuvius was simply part of the landscape green with vineyards. No memory of eruption existed in living history. The volcano had been silent for centuries. It was likely late August in 79 AD, though some modern evidence suggests the eruption may have occurred in October, round midday. A thunderous explosion shattered the calm. The summit of Vesuvius violently ruptured. A column of ash and pumice blasted nearly 30 kilometers into the atmosphere from across the bay. A young Roman writer witnessed the spectacle. His name was Pliny the Younger. He later described the cloud in a letter as resembling a Mediterranean pine tree rising tall before branching outward. His account would give this type of eruption its modern name, a Plinian eruption. The sky darkened rapidly. Ash began to fall. At first, the falling pumice seemed almost surreal light, poor stones bouncing off streets. But within hours, the accumulation grew deadly. 6 inches, 1 foot, 3 feet. Roofs began collapsing under the weight. Citizens faced an impossible choice: stay indoors and risk structural collapse, or flee into choking darkness. Many chose to escape toward the sea. Others barricaded themselves inside. Archaeological evidence reveals heartbreaking details. Families found huddled together, jewelry packed carefully, coins clutched in hands. They were not careless. They were trapped in uncertainty. Across the bay, in Misenum, the Roman fleet was stationed. Its commander, Pliny the Elder, uncle of Pliny the Younger, made a fateful decision. Both a naval commander and a natural philosopher, he saw the eruption as both a scientific curiosity and a rescue mission. He ordered ships launched toward the disaster. As ash rained down and waves grew violent, he pressed forward. He reached the town of Stabia. There, amid toxic fumes and falling debris, he collapsed, likely from suffocation caused by volcanic gases. His body was found days later. He had sailed toward the fire by midnight. Pompeii was unrecognizable. Ash blocked out the moon and stars. Pliny the Younger wrote that the darkness was not like a moonless night, but like being shut in a room with the lamps extinguished. Screams echoed through the streets. Earthquakes intensified. The ground heaved violently. Then, in the early hours of the next morning, came the final catastrophe. A superheated avalanche of gas, ash, and rock burst down the slopes of Vesuvius. This was not falling ash. This was a pyroclastic surge moving at hurricane speeds. Hotter than 400 to 500 degrees Celsius, it engulfed Pompeii within seconds. There was no time to run. Scientific analysis of skeletal remains suggests many victims died instantly from thermal shock, their muscles contracting in the extreme heat, then silence. The city disappeared beneath meters of ash and volcanic debris, homes sealed, streets entombed, bodies preserved in the positions of their final moments. Pompeii was gone. For centuries, wind reshaped the land, vegetation covered the ruins, memory faded, empires rose and fell. The Roman Empire itself would collapse, yet beneath the soil, Pompeii remained, a perfect time capsule of Roman life, unseen, undisturbed, waiting. When the world finally uncovered it, seasons passed, autumn rains fell, winter winds swept across the plains of southern Italy. Grass grew where streets once lay. The Roman Empire that had ruled the Mediterranean began its long decline. Visigoths would one day sack Rome, emperors would rise and fall, languages would change, but beneath hardened volcanic ash, something extraordinary endured. The city of Pompeii did not decay like other ancient cities. It did not erode slowly into anonymity. It remained sealed, protected, preserved by catastrophe. For nearly 17 centuries, it waited in darkness. In the 1700s, southern Italy was ruled by the Bourbon monarchy. The king, Charles VII of Naples, had a passion for antiquities. Inspired by discoveries at nearby Herculaneum, he ordered systematic digging across the region. In 1748, workers cutting irrigation channels struck ancient walls. At first, they did not understand what they had found. Tunnels were dug, statues were extracted, marble was removed for royal collections, but as chambers opened and inscriptions were uncovered, a name appeared repeatedly. Pompeii, the lost Roman city, had resurfaced. Early excavation was more treasure hunting than science. Walls were broken through carelessly. Frescoes were removed from their original context. Valuable artifacts were shipped to royal palaces in Naples. Yet even in this imperfect process, something astonishing became clear. Unlike Rome, which had been rebuilt layer upon layer, Pompeii was frozen in a single moment. 79 AD, entire streets lay intact beneath compacted pumice. Doorways still held wooden imprints. Iron hinges remained in place. It was not just ruins. It was interruption. A city paused mid-breath. In 1860, a new director took charge of excavations, Giuseppe Fiorelli. Fiorelli transformed Pompeii from a treasure site into a scientific excavation. He introduced systematic grid mapping. He recorded precise locations of discoveries. He preserved structures rather than stripping them. But his most haunting innovation came from observing small voids in the ash layers where bodies had once lain. Empty spaces remained. Fiorelli poured liquid plaster into these cavities. When the ash was removed, forms emerged, detailed and devastating. A man curled in fear. A pregnant woman shielding her belly. Two sisters locked in embrace. A dog twisted against its chain. For the first time in history, we could see the faces of ancient disaster victims. Pompeii was no longer abstract. It was personal. Advances in forensic archaeology have allowed modern researchers to go even further. CT scans of plaster casts reveal bones still preserved within. Teeth show a diet rich in grains, olives, and seafood. Skeletal structure reveals labor patterns, some bodies marked by years of physical strain, others by relative comfort. Scientific studies confirm many victims died not from suffocation alone, but from instantaneous thermal shock. pyroclastic surges reached temperatures exceeding 400 degrees Celsius. In some cases, brain tissue was vitrified, turned to glass by extreme heat. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius became one of the most closely studied volcanic events in human history because of the letters written by Pliny the Younger, preserved through Roman historians. Volcanologists gained rare eyewitness detail. His description gave science a term still used today: Plinian eruption, a column of ash rising miles into the sky before collapsing in deadly waves. Pompeii was not alone. Just miles away stood Herculaneum, where Pompeii was buried gradually under pumice. Herculaneum was struck by intense pyroclastic flows that carbonized wood instantly. In Herculaneum, doors survived, furniture survived, even scrolls of papyrus survived, preserved as blackened cylinders. The Villa of the Papyri contained hundreds of carbonized manuscripts, offering rare glimpses into ancient philosophy. Together, these cities provide the most complete archaeological record of daily Roman life ever discovered. Pompeii speaks not only through tragedy, but through routine. Graffiti scratched into walls reveal humor and humanity. Gaius was here. Successes loves Iris. Vote for Lucius for a deal he is worthy. In kitchens, cooking pots remain stacked. In workshops, tools lie abandoned. In a bakery, 81 loaves of bread were discovered in a single oven, carbonized, yet still shaped by the baker's scoring knife. A brothel preserves vivid frescoes that acted as illustrated advertisements. Public baths show complex heating systems using hypocaust technology, with warm air circulating beneath raised floors. Pompeii reveals something rare in ancient history: ordinary lives, not emperors, not generals, but shopkeepers, freed slaves, and children. When Pompeii emerged into public awareness in the 18th and 19th centuries, Europe was stunned. The rediscovery helped ignite the neoclassical movement. Artists and architects drew inspiration from Pompeian symmetry, fresco patterns, and interior color schemes. Suddenly, antiquity was no longer mythic. It was visible, tangible, real. Visitors walked streets where Romans had walked. They saw fingerprints in pottery. They saw bread in ovens. They saw fear on faces. Pompeii blurred the boundary between past and present. Today, Pompeii is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most visited archaeological locations on Earth. Millions pass through its gates each year, yet preservation remains a challenge. Rain erodes frescoes, tourism causes structural stress, climate change introduces new conservation risks, and looming always in the background is Vesuvius. The volcano last erupted in 1944. It remains active. Nearly 3 million people now live in the surrounding region. Scientists monitor seismic activity constantly because history has already demonstrated the cost of underestimating this mountain. Pompeii is not simply a disaster site, it is a mirror. It shows us a society confident in its permanence, a people who believed tomorrow would come as surely as today. And then, in less than 24 hours, everything changed. Cities today feel invincible. Skylines rise higher each year. Technology advances. Yet Pompeii whispers a warning across 2,000 years. Civilization is fragile. Nature is patient. Time remembers. The wind moves softly through empty doorways. Footsteps echo where merchants once called out their prices. Above the ruins, Mount Vesuvius stands quiet once more. Peaceful, unmoving, but never powerless. Pompeii was destroyed, yet through its destruction, it became immortal. A city lost, a city found, a city that still speaks. Beneath ash, history survived, and through Pompeii, the ancient world breathes again. Thanks for watching.